Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you live. Welcome to PPMD's holiday campaign for what we think is an incredibly exciting opportunity that we're building. It's called the Dystrophinopathy Clinical Research Network. This network, as it begins, will include 7 sites across the United States. And with that, to talk a little bit more about the DCRN, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Sam Mackenzie from the University of Rochester, one of the PIs of this network. Sam, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Pat. I think this is a really incredible initiative, and you and I have talked about this for, I think, several years now, and I know you've been thinking about this for several years before that. As you know, we're really at a critical inflection point with Duchenne, and we have all of these medications, I think 8 now, with FDA approval. And we're at a point where we really need to raise the bar, I think, on our evidentiary standard about what works well, what works best in combination, and really reimagining the standard of care for this disease.
Well, so I am thrilled about this network. I have long been an admirer of the Children's Oncology Group, which is a network focused on leukemia, and believing that having a similar model in Duchenne would be really amazing. I think, Sam, we have talked about this for many years. We worked on a master protocol long ago, and then it was the sort of interrupted for a bit because of the pandemic, and now back on track for really moving forward. I think we've talked about for years the idea of combining therapies. And I think trying to get there in what sequence for what person at what time is really going to be important. I also think the cardiac status is really important, and maybe talk a little bit about the Action Learning Network, which is a network we supported to really look at the heart as a possibility to, as function is increased, is that heart going to be built to last, or are these therapies having an impact on the cardiac status as well? So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the need to watch the heart as trajectory evolves.
Absolutely. So as you know, I'm a neuromuscular person. I'm not a cardiologist, but I really admire the work that's been done in the cardiac space. Once we have a drug that's approved, the journey really doesn't end there. And I think they've been pushing the envelope on defining real world evidence and using that evidence to support what they're doing in the clinic. That's really, I think, where we're at really with this disease in general. But in the cardiac space, they've been systematic about collecting that data, leveraging an infrastructure that expands across different sites, so we're not dealing with 100 or 200 patients at a time. It's a heterogeneous disease. We really need to think about large group sizes so we can really measure the effect of some of these emerging therapeutics. And so my hope is that we can shamelessly steal some of the work that's been done on the cardiac side and expand that across the disease, from really, those older patients that it might be more front and center component of the disease, all the way down to, really we're into newborn screening in many states, as you know. So there's a lot of need and also a lot of opportunity to learn about what's happening to these different segments of the Duchenne community on a real world basis, and really get creative about answering some of these questions.
Yeah, Sam, I think newborn screening is such a large issue, and Rochester, New York being one of the first states to agree to have newborn screening for Duchenne and Becker and female carriers on the New York State panel. So we were thrilled to begin funding a consortia that Rochester is going to lead across those states that are now agreeing to screen for Duchenne. So over time, I'm hopeful that the DCRN group will pull in that baby group and pull in the Duchenne babies, if you will, so that we can follow them as well and add these therapies. I guess the other on the other end of the spectrum here, some of the companies, as you know, are next generation antisense oligonucleotides and other therapies in development. And those companies are typically in their protocols excluding children who've been, or young men who've been in a gene therapy protocol or received Elevidys, the approved gene therapy. So how do you see that? And do you see this network could encourage companies to use a cohort of children within its network to look at other therapies to add on to the gene therapy that they've received.
I mean, you're speaking my language. I think, as you know, I'm very excited about innovative clinical trial networks and really flipping the current model on its head, so that we have a patient-centered infrastructure for drug development. Um, it's not easy to do, right? I'm acknowledging that there's heterogeneity and there's a lot of difficulty that might arise with the statistical analysis. We need to make sure we're keeping that standard of rigor. But I don't think the one-to-one placebo-controlled randomized trial fits with this community, especially as you said, in an era where we have 8 FDA-approved treatments and including gene therapy, which really just adds to that heterogeneity. So the way I think we take our first steps towards that future is by just doing a better job about harnessing these data and learning more about what is our current standard of care look like. And once we can define a standard of care, then we use that as a launch point for those clinical trials. And you're right, in an ideal world, we could have companies that approach this network, and if we have core outcome measures that we all agree upon, I think that's what the physician community wants. That's what the patient community wants. We want to be able to compare therapeutics head to head and not do a lot of extrapolation across different outcome measures and different segments of the patient community.
I am really excited, and I'm really deeply grateful for you coming on as a PI and for University of Rochester to be front and center of newborn screening as well as the DCRN. So I can't thank you enough, and there's more to come. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. This is going to be great.